since no matter what I do as a writer, I've got no in at Paramount, despite the fact that I, Rex Wilson, would work tirelessly to take up the mantle of next generation writers for this tremendous IP and fucking murder it. And I mean that in a good way, not the way Alex Kurtzman and his troop of Marxist sissy hacks destroy everything they touch. But I'll never work for Star Trek. So in the hopeful and hypothetical scenario in which a wiser Paramount greenlights Star Trek Legacy, let me paint a picture of the early 25th century Alpha Quadrant. And the Alpha Quadrant is still a big place, boys and girls. Oh, real quick. Imagine a show took place somewhere during the 80 years between the original series and the next generation. You'd see quite the transition, technologically, culturally, and with some of your favorite ensigns and lieutenants and whatnot becoming captains, admirals, ambassadors, the works. To me, that's Star Trek Legacy, not a passing of the torch. The next generation Star Trek has been rocking and rolling for 40 plus years, and we're here to showcase some of our favorite characters in their golden years, while also introducing the next generation. For me, the heroes are defined by the villains. So who are my big three, my villainous triad for Star Trek Legacy and the Enterprise crew under Captain Seven of Nine? The Klingons, the Romulans, and the Borg, each bringing with them all that we, the fans, have come to love, each refreshed and more entertaining for the 25th century than ever before. Remember, we're also reaffirming Star Trek as we know it, booting out Kurtzman and all who've abused the franchise since 2009. The Klingons. In the 1960s, they represented the USSR. I stress that communism and totalitarianism in general is as dangerously prevalent in the world today as it was then. So is the threat that Klingons represent to the Federation. Crippling the Empire in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, by the destruction of the Klingon moon was stupid. The Klingons were spread throughout multiple star systems. Minerals were aplenty, but okay, whatever. The neutral zone ended. Klingons were humbled and weakened. Fine. But you can't switch off that kind of warrior ethos. In my Star Trek Legacy, the Klingons are experiencing a revival, calls for expansion, even for a new neutral zone. Of course, some Klingons don't villainize the Federation, they're not on board, but we take today's U.S. issue with China inserting itself in our hemisphere and China's stealing of technology and its human rights violations, and we transfer it to the Klingons, not in a two-dimensional way either. It's complex because we're not always taking the moral high ground either. In my opinion, the Klingons are a greater practical villain than even the Borg, and that's how I want to treat them. And there are certainly good Klingons. In Star Trek Legacy, Worf is made the Federation ambassador to the Klingons. He didn't want to, but who better in such a dire situation, which causes him to have a lot of internal conflict. Not that he doubts his loyalty regarding Starfleet, but you get it, you're Star Trek fans. I also see half Klingon B'Elanna Torres in here somewhere, and maybe even her daughter with Tom Paris is part of the Enterprise crew. I'll return to the Klingons in a few minutes, but let me roll into Star Trek Legacy's second formidable villain, the Romulans. Now, I consider Romulus being destroyed by a supernova junk science. Kurtzman BS. Supernovas don't just happen, and a Romulan empire spread across multiple star systems would have been aware and would have had a plan in place. But just to rub it in the noses of these hack writers under Alex Kurtzman, I'll retain some of this. But instead of a supernova, the Borg attacks Romulus because the aggressive and proud Romulans done fucked up. The Borg are only partially successful because they're still a weakened species and wind up being pushed completely off of Romulus at some point. But a lot of damage will be done. The raging Romulans are split into multiple factions, the two main camps consisting of those Romulans open to Federation aid and those who tentatively partner with the Klingons. The Klingons seize the opportunity to cause more strife for the Federation, while also utilizing this conflict to build up their economy. Think of the German build-up to World War II. The Romulans are fractured, and much of their society is torn between survival and pride. On top of these conflicts, the Federation is also concerned about being blocked off from information concerning the Borg in the interest of its own survival, and this makes things like treaties, agreements, and even neutral zones difficult to abide, if not impossible. Some failure to live up to its own standards can come about here. Great drama. I see Admiral Janeway being stationed in this area of space for obvious reasons, i.e. her encounters with the Borg in the Delta Quadrant, but with a twist. Just like how Voyager's getting lost in the Delta Quadrant threw a wrench between her and her boyfriend at the time, so does it happen again when she reluctantly agrees to go to a Federation outpost near the Romulan neutral zone, which is a hub for Borg activity. I figure the Borg are still repairing that massive transwarp tunnel system Janeway destroyed decades ago, which has opened in Romulan space like a crack in the foundation. Lots of possibilities with that, like a fissure in space that the Romulans want to control. By the way, there is a new USS Voyager, and her captain is Harry Kim. The third villain of my triad, the Borg. You have to be careful here, because you can only make the Borg so interesting without falling into the trap of relying on the Borg Queen or former Borgs. The way I see it, the impact of the Borg sacking Romulus and their inevitable return is more tantalizing than a series where we constantly see the Borg, because you can't just flirt with the Borg like that. They're too powerful. But the Borg represent consumerism and the sacrifice of one's humanity to technology. I'd argue that the Borg have never been more relevant in Star Trek than they are right now. But you have to do it right, because the Borg can get boring quick. And the more you engage the Borg, the more you risk diluting them as a brand. Naturally, Captain 7 of 9 fits in well here, and really her internal struggles as a former drone plays extremely well. In Star Trek Legacy, you have beautiful conflict and drama everywhere. I'd argue that we've taken the Alpha Quadrant for granted, and really we don't know it as well as we think. We're very far-reaching when it comes to going where no one has gone before. But like a road trip where you only stay on the superhighway, you miss so many side roads and hidden neighborhoods. What star systems and alien species lived under the Iron Curtain of the Klingon Empire? What was that like? Which joined the Federation, and which just wanted to rule themselves after the Klingon neutral zone ended? And what would they do under the threat of Klingons ruling them again? So much wealth here for a proper writer. And as a close fourth villain, I see the crooked Cardassians trying to take advantage, getting into battles with the Klingons, wanting Borg technology. I see the opportunity of leaks from this fissure in Romulan space as well. Who from Deep Space Nine do you see in this series, by the way? There's just so much. I cannot do it justice in this video, but you heard some of my ideas. What do you think? Let me know. But before I go, one more thing about the new Enterprise's first officer. I like the actress who played Commander Raffi and the character itself. I'm talking about Star Trek Picard Season 3. That's the only season I saw. But not as a first officer. She needs to be the tactical officer or just gone, but not Seven's number 2. Not only because they were lovers, which is improper in the chain of command and could cause boring, petty relationship BS, you need to have a male-female dynamic. So the first officer should be a male. You can use the former relationship angle as a reason why Raffi was demoted. Also, in this world, I would wind back androids and holograms. I know they seem more relevant than ever, but I feel like it's been too much and it feels lackluster. Why does Data no longer seem unique to me? Anyway, I'll never get to write for Star Trek, but if I did, this is the foundation I see for Star Trek Legacy. Not a passing of the torch, as I said, but just trying to make things make sense in this world, like our own, that is changing faster than we're able to keep up with. This ends episode 4 of Rex Wilson Rants. Episode 5 and 6 will be my sharing stories from the strip club when I was a bouncer in New York City, much like episode 2. So please like, share, and subscribe and stay updated, not just on Rex Wilson Rants, but on my debut graphic novel coming out in May. I am Rex Wilson. Fight, fight, fight. Take care.